Hi, welcome to Shaky Sports Journeys, another T20 World Cup diary for you today on the eve of another huge fixture for Cricket Scotland as they take on Zimbabwe in the T20 World Cup tomorrow. We'll get to chatting about that, but I'll introduce my guest first and foremost. I've been kindly joined by the Scotland women's captain and 100 star as well, Kathryn Bryce. How are you, Kathryn?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. Thanks for having me on again.
Pleasure. Always a pleasure to have you on, Kathryn. We were just talking about the grim weather that we're starting to get in Scotland. Although it doesn't look too far off the same kind of grim weather that Australia's getting at the moment.
Yeah, it doesn't look much warmer out there either.
Not at all. Not that strange time to take up the tournament, but I think it was all probably to do with not wanting to clash with the Football World Cup as well. But yes, it reminds me of April in the West, looking at it from afar. So, have you watched? Have you been setting the alarm? Did you wake up for the West Indies fixture?
Yeah, so I can't say that I watched the very start of the game, but I was definitely up and saw most of the second innings, and it was just incredible that they went out there. And obviously, like, Munsey seems to have got a bit of stick for his innings, but like a lot of people say, you need to watch both innings to see how it goes, and actually you've got the opportunity to get yourself and your team into a winning position. I think that performance really set up the tournament for the team.
Yeah, no, I agree. Commentators spoke too soon there. But yeah, it was a crucial knock. If he doesn't stay in and bat through the overs, I agree. We could probably end up being 20, 30 shorter than that, and then probably likely West Indies would chase. Bowling and the fielding, though, was outstanding, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think they took every single catch that came their way, and not simple ones either. So I think that's a big testament to how hard the lads have worked over the last few years to really to up their game and show that same professionalism that there is at every other level of international cricket.
Especially with so little cricket, about this. I think I was looking at something that the West Indies had played something like 21 T20 internationals in the last 12 months or whatever. Don't quote me on that. I don't know how long over a period it was, but Scotland had played 2. So it kind of tells you, how unprepared we go into these big tournaments. It's a big ask, but yeah, great victory, historical victory for Scottish cricket. Hopefully you and your team can take motivation from something like that, and we see you taking down some of the big teams in future as well. Then we played the Irish. The luck of the Irish.
Yeah.
That was pretty heartbreaking, wasn't it?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's always difficult to watch. The game just kind of slips away, and remind me a little bit of the last game that played in our World Cup qualifier against PNG, where we had a good total on the board, and the game just seems to keep on going and getting away from you. And I think that what you touched on before about having only played 2 T20 games since the last World Cup is a huge part of it, is that experience in those situations, and in so many different situations where the best captains and players know, like, how do you take a bit more time out of the game, and how do you change momentum and things like that in games that just kind of seem like they're going at 100 miles an hour, and there doesn't seem like anything that you do kind of works out, and anyone you turn to, wherever you bowl the ball, it seems to go wrong.
Very good points. You're a captain, so I can imagine you're talking from experience when that does happen. It did seem like that. I mean, those last 10 overs, you probably are now thinking, could we have slowed the game down a little bit? Could we have tried something a little bit different, changed the field up, whatever it may be? Look, it's easier said than done when you're sitting back here. Pressure's on at that point. But everything from that moment, it was like 75% of the game Scotland dominated.
Yeah.
And then just that last 25%, nothing went right for us. Yeah. In those situations, if you're in those situations, what would you think what would you like to think you would do as a leader at those moments?
Yeah, I think as a leader, I think you often try and turn to your players that can stand up in those big moments, and you think of someone like Mark Watt that's been so experienced, and you just kind of hope that turning to one of those big players, that, like, big game players, as you quite often call them, can pull something out of the bag and get an over that goes for 3 or 4, or it picks up a wicket, and just kind of try and change the momentum a bit of the game, or you get a run out and something special happens in the field. It's quite a difficult sort of situation to be in, but I think one of those sort of moments that you try and look for.
I did mention the luck of the Irish. That's probably played a big part as well. Look, credit to both those batsmen. That was a fantastic partnership. Really gutsy, brave, You have to put your hands up sometimes and just admire it. But yeah, watching on as as a Scotland fan, it was pretty gut wrenching to just watch everything go in their favour. But look, even if we had won that fixture, it still goes, it still goes to the last fixture. It didn't mean we're guaranteed a place to qualify. So all is not lost. We still sit pretty at the top of the group going into this last fixture against a team that, probably, slightly ahead of us in the rankings, and they beat us in a series over here in Edinburgh not too long ago. But a huge fixture for both teams tomorrow morning. What's your initial thoughts on the game?
Yeah, I think it's definitely one of those frustrating things in a way. It's like actually you win that game, but you've still got a big job to do going into this one. So you're kind of in a similar position anyway, to where you thought you'd be mindset wise in the tournament. So yeah, I think it's pretty simple really. You go into it, you've got to win the game, and it kind of makes things a little bit more simple. But I think what's really positive is that lots of different people have stepped up throughout the tournament so far and in the last few games, and it's not just one person that's scoring runs or one person that's taking wickets and doing good things, because then I think you can often rely on them a bit more, but actually that you can just go out there, play a game of cricket, and there's other people around you that are performing well, and you've got the full backing of the team. There's 11 players out there that can perform on the day, and someone's going to have a good day out. But I think as well, a bit of the reverse of what happened in the last game, just knowing wherever you are in the game, you've got a chance of winning. And I think especially in a knockout game, as you like it like that, then it's at any point of the game, you're never out of it. And I think probably that's something as Scotland we're pretty good at is knowing that like fighting these battles when you're down and out. Most of the games that we play are must-win games, so we're more experienced at that side of it, and just going out there. And I think we've played some absolutely fantastic cricket, so I think we're in a really good position going into the final game.
Yeah, so true what you just said there, that every game Scotland tends to play in, there's a hell of a lot riding on it. You don't have the luxury that we've got 10 more fixtures coming off the back of it. We need to try and win this and get into the full World Cup. Personally, my views are that it shouldn't even be this qualification. I believe that the World Cup should be extended. I'm sure you would agree with me that, we need to grow the game, get more teams involved. And it's sad that we're going to have to see some really good teams depart and not be part of the World Cup, but fingers all crossed, we'll be part of it. But yeah, you mentioned there how it's not been one player that's put their hands up, and I completely agree. In the first game, George Munsey scored runs, and then Michael Leask and Mark Watt were fantastic with the ball. In the second game, Michael Jones, who's now kind of new fresh face at the top of the batting order, who looks like he's taken to it very nicely, looked good in the first game as well, but he batted superbly. Those 2-3 players that I've just mentioned, they're going to be crucial in tomorrow's game.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's the thing with T20 cricket, is actually it just takes one person to have a day out, and a few others to kind of chip in around it. So there's a few of them in there that have definitely got that ability, and hopefully one of them will come off tomorrow.
Zimbabwe, I don't know all their players inside out. I won't claim to know them all, but I know a couple. In particular, probably their best player, Secunda Raza, who is a fantastic all-round cricketer, dangerous batsman, as proved earlier in the tournament against Ireland, and then against the West Indies, although it wasn't enough to win them the game. He took wickets as well with the ball. He's going to be somebody that we need to try and keep as quiet as possible in tomorrow's game.
Yeah, definitely. And I think what they showed in the first game against the West Indies is actually, if you can get your plans right and I'm sure they do their homework really well and kind of look at all the stats and different things like that, if you can just get as much information as possible and just back yourself to stick to your plans and have your plans B and C and D and whatever you need for T20 cricket, just to try and minimise the strength of them. I think was Ireland that bowled pretty short and just right into his strength, just putting the ball away. So I think if you can try and minimise that as much as possible and take that away from him, that's just all you can do really in T20 cricket.
No, I completely agree. They bowled, he pulled a lot, and he played kind of punched off the back foot through cover. If we take those options away from him, make him do something more outside the box, hopefully we can get his wicket, because he's a crucial player. They've also got, and I don't know the pronunciation of his name, but a 6'8" opening bowler who looks like he's been quite, he's quite effective. He's going to be a handful, especially on Australian pitches where there's that extra bounce. It might not be as bouncy as what it normally is due to to the way the weather's, but it's still got more bounce than what normal. That could be something that we need to be aware of early doors.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's often that ball that you just try and get through a bit more, obviously still be really positive, but just find a way to score as much as possible off them in those more sort of risk-free ways, and just minimize the impact that has. And I think that often takes a bit of the sting out of the team as well, when you've got big stand-up players and you can minimize their impact in the game. I think it often takes a bit of the wind out of the rest of the team as well. So I think that'll be really key at the start of the innings.
Yeah, I'm sure they're having meetings and they're going to know who to target and maybe who to be a little bit more cautious and reserved with. But in T20 cricket, as you know, you don't really get the luxury at all of it really kind of having that time to just play out a few overs of a steady bowler. You need to still have some sort of plan against them. So coming to last couple of questions I've got for you in this chat today, as we preview a really, really exciting fixture tomorrow. You're a leader. You have lots of these type of conversations the night before the game. I'm sure you know what I'm going to ask you. It's the dreaded selection of the team. Now, like I said, you're in these conversations often with the team manager, coach. You know how hard it can be. Sometimes you need to make those tough decisions. I've got my opinion, but I want your opinion first. What do you think of the squad going into this game, and would you make any changes?
I think it's always a tough sort of decision at this period of the game. Whether you go, if you've got a team that's been winning and being successful, and that consistency of team, but also it's a must-win game, and it's now or never really. So you've got to kind of put the team out there that you think is going to perform the best out there. I don't know exactly what team I'd put out there, and probably not looked at it in enough detail as to who'd be in that team. But I think for some of the matchups, I don't know whether like seamers and spinners, probably not the best person to ask them who's in the
selection. So I'll throw some stuff at you, and look, by no stretch am I trying to get you to make any serious decisions or say we're it's just for talking sake. But Josh Davies been successful for Scotland for quite a period of time, no doubt about it. He's done it on the big stage. In this World Cup so far, I think he's bowled 7 overs and he's going at kind of 11.5 an over. That's a concern for me watching on. And then I'm looking at it and I'm thinking a couple of lads are sitting on the bench who I think are really good bowlers. First one that comes to mind is Hamza Tahir, who bowled well when he came in the last game of the last tournament against Pakistan, against 2 of the best batsmen in the world. It's whether or not they would want to bring another seamer, or they'd be happy with just having 2 seamers and a spin and another spinner brought in. Or there's a couple other lads as well. Brandon McMullen, who's not debuted yet. It's a big ask, but we hear he's been taken there for a reason, because he's clearly a top cricketer. And there's Chris Soule as well, who's probably the quickest of the Scotland bowling attack. Would that maybe be something you would be, if you were out there, you'd be looking at? If you were seeing a bowler going at that kind of rate for the first 2 games, would it be a concern?
Yeah, I think it's definitely something to look at. I think that's definitely one of the things that has been a little bit exposed. The seamers probably haven't been right on it as they have in recent times. So I think it's definitely something to look at. Probably going into the game with only 2 seamers is probably a bit of a risk, especially if they haven't been as consistent. So you've not got as much flexibility around that. But I definitely think there's definitely a possibility of mixing it up. And I think when it's almost worth the gamble of bringing someone new in and saying, well, if they've not done their job anyway, then bringing someone new in might be worth it. And if you only get a couple of overs out of them, then they're doing the same sort of job as we've had before. So yeah, it's just, I think sometimes it's around a bit of the feel of the team, and you get a bit of a gut feel when you're out there and around it. But it's definitely something that would be they'd definitely be having some chats about.
Yeah, it's so hard in T20 because when you're picking the team, you sometimes think, oh well, we should pick those 2 3 players because they give us more with the bat and they're good at better in the field. But then you think, but this person is a better bowler than those 2 players. And then it's, do you go with the better bowlers? My thinking always is, if I'm being honest, you go with your 5 best bowlers and your top 5 batsmen, and then you kind of work out your strategy. That makes it sound really straightforward. I know it's not as straightforward as that, but I think it's important in T20 to have your best bowlers, you know, that can take wickets. That wins you games. If you just try to maintain with part-time bowlers, it can sometimes sting you. 1 or 2 overs go wrong, and that could be curtains for you. Okay, who wins and how? What's your prediction for the game tomorrow?
I think Scotland win, setting a big target, big total.
What's the big total? What do you think? What do you think they need?
Big total. I reckon 180.
Yeah.
Again, would be really good kind of total to have on. It's a good pitch. I don't know if they're playing on the same pitches, whether it's changing much kind of over the last few days. But that kind of 150, 160.
It's a dangling carrot, that score, isn't it?
It's kind of it. You know, in a knockout game, it might be enough, especially the last couple of games you've seen. If you get good starts with the ball, it can be the teams kind of fall away a little bit. But I reckon 170, 180. I think will be a really good total to have, and it might look like Zimbabwe are going to chase it down, but someone's going to come in and bowl an over for 2 runs for 2 wickets, and then fall off the edge.
You heard it here. You heard it here first. I like that. Actually, I hope your prediction is on point. So I did a podcast the night before the last game, and Kyle McCallan, ex-Ireland player, said Ireland win by 6 wickets, and they bloody won by 6 wickets. So you've called. We've not called the over, but you've called at some point in the chase somebody's going to bowl an over. If I were to predict it, it wouldn't surprise me if it's a Mark Watt. They take a couple of wickets and the game changes. But here's another one for you. Remember quite a few years ago now, we were sent home, you know, painfully watching the rain against the West Indies, and I think every Scottish cricket fan still feels it. There is talk that the weather forecast is not particularly great. It might change again, but it could just be a washout and we're through. We'd take that, wouldn't we?
Yeah, I think so. I think you don't always want to go through in a washout, but I think we've had a fair share of bad luck in our time that actually you got to take it sometimes.
We're Scottish. You'd like to think the weather is going to play on our...
It should be on our side, but quite often it's the reason that we're getting trouble.
It tends to go against us. Well, look, hopefully we get whatever happens tomorrow, we get the result that we're looking for. You know, I've been really impressed, as you have, with the first 2 games. You know, Ireland just played out their skin in that last 10 overs, and you have to just say well played. But tomorrow's a new day. Our fingers are all crossed, and hopefully Scotland can get over the line and get into the main World Cup. But thank you ever so much, as always, for joining me. Just before we go, you were mentioning beforehand, you're headed to Australia soon?
Yes, off at the end of the month, or next week now, actually. So.
And you're going for how many months?
About 4 and a bit months. So
this is all cricket related. Just get yourself away in the off season, and you're going to Tasmania.
Yeah. So I'll miss the boys. Hopefully, I'll be able to watch in the right time zone whilst they're at the World Cup.
Yep, fingers crossed. And then your sister will be joining you as well.
Yeah, out in Melbourne.
Hopefully you can have a cool New Year's, Christmas over in Australia, and wish you all the best in your travels, and maybe I'll touch base with you while you're out there.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks very much.
Cheers, Kathryn.